Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, we're rolling. It's Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 177 of Gridiron Grinder. For tonight, we're going to kick things off with Name That Stadium. Then we're going to cover the news from this past week. After that, we're going to give you a preview of the Pro Bowl games. And last but not least, we'll close it off with our question of the week. Yeah, with all that being said, how's it going tonight there, James?
Started off as a somber week, but I've kind of
You're
changed my
past it.
tune. I'm past it, changed my tune a little bit once I looked into to a little bit of stats. So, you know,
Yeah, and obviously you're referring to the Lions game,
yeah,
and it's tough. We had a heck of a season. I think, in my opinion, the team was well ahead of schedule. I was really looking to next year being the year where I was going to finally raise the bar on them. Um, but yeah, it's them getting as far as they did and then losing the way they did. It definitely stung, right? But
hmm
still a heck of a year, a lot to be proud of, and I think hopefully a lot to be building off of, which is good. So
yeah, exactly. A lot to be building off of, and you kind of got to go through the heartbreak. Hopefully, this is not like the '91 season where they make it to the NFC Championship game and then don't make it for another 33 years.
oh yeah, yeah,
32 years. So hopefully, everything, everything said with that, they should be one of the top teams in the NFC again next year, and hopefully the experience can drive them to go a little further. But I got my hopes up for next year, but I'm gonna be optimist. I'm gonna be pessimistic about it because
yeah.
I've seen this happen before.
Got to be cautious. Yeah. And they do have a lot of free agents, and you just can never predict what the heck can happen.
Yeah.
Frickin' golf or anybody could get hurt, and then the whole thing just goes to frickin' hell in a handbasket. But yeah, man. Hey, why don't you do a little name that stadium for us, my man?
So this week I messed up. I completely gaffed on it, but
It's all
it's part
right.
of the
I'm looking
show.
at it and I'm thinking, you're maybe going a week ahead, and
No, no, because next week
it'll be
I'll be
somewhere
at
else too, right? Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be Allegiant Stadium probably next week
Okay.
for those that want to play.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
Hint, hint.
you part of the show. I'm traveling around different stadiums that host NFL games. First person guesses it right, we'll give you an extra special shout out. Bookmark it. You can play it back for your friends. Nobody plays anymore, so I don't know why I keep saying it. Last week I was at Levi Stadium for the Lions game. It was a good game. There's a lot of play call controversy coming out of it, which when we get to our recap, I'll dispel some of that stuff a
Sure.
little bit. But you know, guess where I am this week? It's probably who I'm thinking is going to be the Super Bowl champion. For those
That's kind of
that
what I was thinking when I saw it.
yeah, for those that want to play this week, it's one of the Super Bowl teams, but and it's not the same stadium I was at last week, so that should tell you. But
Figure it out.
figure it out. There's two choices, and I was at one of them last week, and it's not that stadium. So
Yeah, yeah. Should be pretty easy to figure out.
yeah,
All right. Well, yeah, that's name that stadium. I guess let's do our recap of the past week. And so you wanted to break down the game. Do you want to save that for the end of the recap, or you want to
let's
just
save
kick it
that for
off?
the let's like because news is kind of short, so let's just go through the
Yeah, we'll
news a
save
little
it for
bit.
the end, and then that way we can just kind of ramble on about it, because I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
lot to talk about, right? All right, so yeah, just looking at a couple coaching changes from this past week. Looks like the Ravens have hired, or not, I'm sorry, not the Ravens. The Seahawks have
Yes.
hired the former Ravens defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, to be their new head coach, replacing Pete Carroll. Um, and then that leaves Washington is the lone team with a head coach opening right now,
Mhm.
unless there's some surprise change with one of these teams, which I thought there'd be at least one, and there hasn't really been one. It seems like that window is closing now. Every week that goes on seems less and less likely that one will pop up, but you never know. And then I do think, even though it's not a head coach thing, very important to point out the Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, has opted to return to the
Mhm.
Lions next year. And so I'm super pumped about that. I mean, that's, with us losing that game, at least this is like sort of like a consolation prize, right? We're getting to hang on to the guy that has been a big part of the magic for this team.
Yeah, and the thing with Ben Johnson coming back is he was the favorite to land the Washington job, which is it's a good job to have for your first head coaching stint. I mean, they have the number 2 pick. You can really put your
Yeah,
fingerprints on the team
they
with
have
where they are.
pieces.
They have pieces. They have a whole shitload of salary cap. I was looking at it. I forget the total number, but it was ridiculous how much cap space they have, um, or projected cap space they have. Let me pull it up again real quick because it.
Sure. Yeah.
God damn it! Stupid fucking ads. So for 2025, they have a projected.
We got to see 2024.
Thank you. They have a projected $74 million in cap space.
Yeah, that gives them a lot to work with.
Yeah, it gives them a lot to work with. They kind of they got rid of some of their problem children on defense, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and you're coming in, you're drafting, you're having a rookie quarterback, and you can kind of put your fingerprints and push the team forward really quick. Especially like they have a really good running back that's still
Yeah.
under contract. Two of them actually.
Follow exactly what Detroit did. Beef
Yeah.
up the offensive line like
Hmm.
crazy and get that rookie. I mean, Detroit didn't get the rookie quarterback, but get your quarterback. And they've got the receivers, they've got the running backs. At least you know right there, year one, your offense is ready to roll, and then you
Yeah.
can work on fine tuning defense.
Exactly. Beef up the offensive line, but I mean, just beef up the trenches
Hmm.
and you know get those players in there that are going to buy in,
Yeah, and that
and
defensive
you're
line
all
should be
set.
pretty good still, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. But I mean, it's Washington is looking at where they are. If they get the right coach, they're primed to win, to make the playoffs and possibly make some noise in the playoffs next year because of the situation you're going into. And from all accounts, since the team was sold, like I forget the GM they brought in,
yeah.
but from all accounts, he's like the real deal for GMs. So they kind of like fly under the radar, like Brad Holmes did, where it's like, wow, this like I
Oh
some
yeah,
of the moves for Holmes, like I questioned it at the time, but they've all worked out
yeah,
pretty well so
yeah. The
far.
track
So
record has been really good, and it's hard to not question it, right? When you look at the history of the Lions,
yeah,
and there were some like eerily similar kinds of picks in the past that just weren't ever even close to working. And
yeah,
so it's like, when you got a newer GM, it's like, okay, well, dude, you're just going to fall into the same traps, man. And then, of course, his worked, which is like, holy shit, a breath of fresh air. We actually got a real GM now, finally.
yeah. It actually a real GM that appears so far to know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I think if I remember correctly, he has decent amount of space to work with next year too. He has 60 million.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of free agents from what I've been hearing. And so I think, the expectation is that it might be a little trickier than it might seem on the surface, but um, I've got some faith that they're going to be able to put it all together, man.
Right, but even having the free agents, you have the free agents, but you have the space there to bring those
The
free
ones you
agents
want to
back.
bring back,
The ones you
yeah.
want to exactly the ones you want to bring back. You have the flexibility to bring them back and still go out and get a couple good players and where you're seeing holes.
Yeah, for sure, man. Oh yeah, I'm digging it. Um, I guess back to some other news. So the Senior Bowl, James, is going on this
Hmm.
week. I believe today was day two of practice. And so I'm a little bit behind on digging into it, reading up on it. Usually for the Senior Bowl, I don't necessarily watch it as much. I usually read about it afterwards, read all the analysis, and it's a good way to start finding some possible draft gems, right? Because it seems like every year you get at least a couple guys that unexpectedly rise up from the Senior Bowl, and it's like, oh, well, they were seniors, so they weren't good enough to, uh, you know, decide to opt for the draft early or whatever, but that extra year on their team benefited them. And now when they're going up against the best competition you can put around them, they're the guys like the creams rising to the top and whatever. And so it's always good to keep an eye on. And I'm sure, next week or the week after, we'll probably start talking about some of the guys that stuck out and who to keep an eye on, right? So,
Yeah, e- exactly. Like a couple positions, like you'll find the gems, the ones in the later rounds, but like a lot of the first rounders, like who
yeah.
a lot of well, not you because you haven't paid attention. I know certain positions roughly who's going to go in the first round versus who I think shouldn't go in the first round, especially at quarterback. I I don't understand the hype of the Oregon and Washington and LSU quarterbacks. I think there's really two quarterbacks in this draft
Yeah, well,
that
the LSU guys, because he won the Heisman, right? So,
well, the LSU guy, it's
and he's dual
partly
threat.
yeah, partly because he won the Heisman, partly because of dual threat. I mean, he had decent stats this
Yeah, and
this
it's a
year,
Brian
but
Kelly guy, right? Like, Brian Kelly got the benefit of coaching him this year, and I think NFL clubs like that because Brian Kelly, he's like this quarterback guru, whatever. I don't know. I don't like Brian Kelly, but yeah. So I think that
yeah,
helps. I think it helps the quarterback's chances. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, and like he jumped from on a lot of people's boards. He jumped ahead of Drake May, but
Okay.
this year he had a 72% completion percentage, 3,800 yards, 40 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions.
Yeah.
So he has had the stats, but also LSU. I think LSU's didn't have it had tough of a schedule. If you looked at their schedule this year, or sorry, this past season, they didn't have like the schedule that they have coming up. Like next year, if he did that, I would say maybe. But I mean, they played Georgia State. They played they thwomped Georgia State. They killed Army. They beat Army 62-0. So I mean, I don't know even know if Army won 3 games this year. Oh, they were 6-6. Sorry, but it's like they didn't have that
Yeah.
stellar of competition. Yeah, they started off with Florida State, who in theory should have won or should have gone to the playoffs, but they didn't because of their quarterback. But when you look at the game, uh, Daniels didn't have a good game at all. Um, well, I take that back. He did have a decent game against Florida State. But he was one touchdown, one interception, 346 yards. But it's just I don't see him translating. Like everyone's saying, like he'll translate. like Lamar did, but Lamar or Tua translated, but the jury's still out on those players. And I don't know if Jaden Daniels, when you get into an NFL style offense, is
Yeah, is he going to be
that
one of those players where the coach is going to have the playbook built around him and not the
yeah.
other way around?
Exactly, and I'm looking at Kuiper's ranking of quarterbacks, and I like the fact that he dropped Penix and Bo Nix. That's what I've been saying for a while on them.
Okay.
But I think it's just Caleb Williams and Drake May, and those are the only two that translate to like instantly being successful in the NFL. Like everyone else, I see as a project quarterback.
Gotcha.
And like, who cares about running backs because those guys, unless you get it, but like you have like it's. I see this, and we'll get more into it in the draft. I see this draft being a lot of linemen, offensive linemen, and defense. Like when you look at it,
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
what
like
I've been hearing.
one.
Well, I did hear a lot of wide receivers too. It could be another deep class for that. You're saying
I
no?
I don't think any of the besides Harrison Jr. I don't think any of the other wide receivers are first round worthy wide receivers. They're all kind of project wide receivers and might have benefited because their quarterback was having better games or they played weak schedules. Like maybe Odunze from Washington, but that's about it for first round receivers. And then like I mean offensive line, like there's a lot of good offensive
Yeah, I
linemen
did see that in one of the
in this
mocks. There was
draft.
a lot of tackles and even an interior guy projected to go in the first round.
Mm-hmm. And there's and then there's like three or four probably first round. Going too far into the draft. That gets its
It's all
own
right. I
show. But
teased you by talking about prospects in the Senior Bowl, and it got your mind running there, man.
yeah,
So,
it did. And like unlike you, I pay attention to college football and I'll watch it as I can on Saturdays. Like, you know, if the I like let the wife have Saturdays because Sundays are shot every week. So if she, but I try to pay attention and I'll watch the highlights and watch as much of it as I can. And I just don't I don't I see it as a heavy big guy, heavy lineman draft, heavy lineman and maybe lineman linebackers, maybe
gotcha.
a couple secondary people sprinkled in there like Tavondre Sweat. I'm sorry, that's defensive tackle, not what's his name? Same team. What's his name? Damn it.
I can't help you,
Oh,
man. I can't help you.
it's Wiggins.
Okay.
Wiggins from Clemson. I see like cornerback, maybe him sprinkled in there, a couple other ones, maybe, but mostly linebackers, linemen, and O line. Like two quarterbacks and one wide receiver. It's going to be a different draft, I think. Obviously, quarterback and these skill positions they overdraft them, and but I think you can get if if you're patient, you can get a really good wide receiver in the second round that's as good, if not as good, close to as good as the wide receiver as the guy you'd be picking in the first round outside of maybe Odunze and Harrison.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, sweetness. Um, all right. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess bringing it back to the news, aside from that, um, really the only thing I wanted to point out was Charles Omenihu, defensive end for the Chiefs, tore his ACL in this past game. And so, I know we're more than a week out for the Super Bowl, right? But he is going to be out, unfortunately. That's a big blow to them. He was a key piece on that defense. Everybody really knows Chris Jones and some of those guys, but he was pretty good for them too. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sucks, but that their defense is pretty good, and I think they'll be able to survive without him.
Yeah. What else you got, my man?
Just some little like bullshit things like the funny thing I see is that I saw was Justin Tucker kind of stretched and put his kicking tee in his helmet, where like trying to
Oh,
joke around,
yeah, I saw that.
where
Yeah.
Mahomes was trying to warm up and just kind of trying to fuck with him, not fuck with him, just joke around, like, but apparently it didn't go over very well.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't digging that, but I don't know. Yeah, I think Tucker was trying to downplay it, and then like Mahomes was like, no, he was trying to get in our heads, and you know,
No, no, because like if you heard what Kelsey said on the what is this whatever New Heights podcast. He, he said Justin came out and he said it was more of a joking gesture and kind of fun competitive move, and I get it. He was kind of winking at me, being a douche about it, trying to get under the skin. We just weren't in a joking mood. We were ready to get after it.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
he was, if he's sitting there like winking at Kelsey, like I mean he's just joking around
Yeah.
and having fun, and
And
it's
Kelsey was like, F that, get out of here, man.
yeah.
Well, respect their space. I mean, hey, I don't know, dude. It's to each his own. To each his own.
Yeah. So
So,
and like Mahomes said, like he's Mahomes just was like I was just gonna let it slide and like just continue to warm up, but then Kelsey came over um and moved it, and it's like
not today.
yeah.
Okay. All right. What
So
else you got on the news?
uh, I probably scraping the bottom, but Green Bay hired defensive coordinator, the college guy, uh, Boston College, Jeff Hathley.
Okay.
The fuck he is.
Yeah, I don't know much about him.
He he was the head coach for Boston College, but he was 22 and 26 in 4 seasons there. But he did go to we did have a 500 season 3 of the 4 seasons he was there. So because you need 500 to make the bowl. And so I mean it could work out, could not work out. I I don't know enough about
Yeah.
him to
They've
kind
got
of.
guys on that defense, right? So as long as he's capable, you know, the big thing is Jordan Love turned out to be really good for them, and the
Mhm.
defense ended up being really good for them, which people were expecting. But, if they can keep everything moving in the right direction, Green Bay could be a big threat again next year, which, you know, they're banking on this guy being the real deal as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, so he did so he had a couple before is this the right. Okay. So he was with Rutgers in 2011. Rutgers is not a football school, and while he was defense, he coached the defense there, and it was the ninth ranked defense in the country, and then he did a little bit of coaching in the NFL. He was an assistant defensive backs coach with Tampa Bay in 2013, and they the defense when he was there, Tampa Bay finished tied for third in the NFL in interceptions. He was secondaries coach in Cleveland for a little bit, but the coaching staff was overhauled. He was with San Francisco under Chip Kelly as defensive backs coach. and he was a co-defensive coordinator for Ohio State in 2019.
Okay.
So he's a defense. Obviously he's a defensive minded coach, but he yet to be seen what he can do at the NFL level. Boston College, which hasn't been the best football program in recent years. 6-5, 6-6, 3-9, and 7-6 in his 4 seasons. And they play in the ACC, which his 4 seasons there, like besides his past season, the first 3 seasons was when Clemson and Florida State and a couple other good programs in the ACCs, and so ended up with above a 500 or above record. So we'll see.
Sweet.
Outside of that, I think that was like about all I saw for the news. Let me take a quick.
Take a peek, my man. Take a peek.
Kareem Hunt had surgery for his ruptured abductor. And apparently Jerry Jones is talking about how if Belichick was the coach of the Cowboys, it would work out.
What?
Mm-hmm. Something about that. I haven't read the article. But his quote was, "I know him personally and I like him. There's no doubt in my mind we could work together." None.
Okay.
And which is kind of stirring the pot with the McCarthy false with support from the owner. But what does look like with the Cowboys is they're not going to give him an extension, and 2024 is his last season on his contract. So it's kind of a make or break year in 2024, and if he doesn't make it, then
I tell you what, man, it's interesting because let's just say, and I don't know that this is going to happen because you'd think it would have been announced by now, but let's just say Dan Quinn gets the job in Washington.
What I'm hearing is Dan Quinn isn't even in the running for Washington.
Okay, so it'd have to be a surprise.
Yeah,
but I guess what I was going to say is that if I'm Jerry Jones, then I'm probably pretty strongly thinking about a guy like Belichick, because he's great with the defense, and you just had a gaping hole at defensive coordinator. And then, his downfall obviously was that he didn't have a quarterback. Well, you're giving him Dak and a strong offensive line, and it's like, yeah, I could definitely see Belichick having success in Dallas with the team that they have, but yeah, I don't know. I guess the Dan Quinn thing, it didn't, and then frickin' Vrabel's still hanging out there, man. What the hell?
See, I heard Vrabel was. I'm hearing a lot about Vrabel and for Washington. 4 coaches. Okay, so their interview list. This is what I found. So Aaron Glenn, Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator,
which he did a Ben Johnson, I think, where he said he's going back to Houston.
Okay, I hadn't seen that. Okay, so Dan Quinn had an in-person interview this week, so that's new. Bieniemy is another one that they're looking at, but so their list basically is down to 1, 2, 3, 4 people that are still available who they interviewed or who they are interviewing. It's Aaron Glenn, Ravens D-line coach Anthony Weaver.
Okay.
I guess Dan Quinn is still on the list, and Eric Bieniemy. Those are the 4 people that are on their that they're interviewing or that they're going to interview or have interviewed. And as of today, looking at it, they've interviewed all of them. The last interview was scheduled for yesterday for them.
Gotcha.
But I had heard that it's not likely that Dan Quinn got the Washington job. I had heard that Dan Quinn was actually, everything was pointing towards Quinn going back to Seattle. But
Yeah,
I
and then they
heard,
hired McDonald. Yeah.
yeah. But then I think it was Schefter was on one of the radio shows I listened to, and Schefter said, "Don't be surprised if," because it was Ben Johnson was the favorite to go to Washington, Dan Quinn was the favorite to go to Seattle, and he said, "Don't be surprised if McDonald comes in and gets one of the jobs, and Bieniemy was the other one that he said." So
Gotcha.
we'll see.
Yeah, we should know pretty soon, right? I mean, these
Mhm.
guys aren't going to hold out forever. They want to get them
Yeah,
locked in and get moving.
exactly. I think unless there's somebody that they want to interview that's like Spagnola or something like that where they haven't been able to interview them.
Yeah, which they should have been able to interview him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Ben Johnson had like freaking a zillion interviews, which bummed me out that, it's tough. It's like you don't want those guys to be distracted 2 days before a playoff game,
Yeah.
like, oh man. But it's just the way it works. So,
Yeah, but
um, yeah,
I was surprised that Belichick didn't get any real attention.
yeah, just the two interviews with Atlanta, which were probably just hanging out with his buddy. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So, and then I heard Arthur Smith is the favorite to become the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh.
I thought they
Was
signed him.
it? Did they sign him?
Yeah,
I hadn't I hadn't followed up on it, so that makes sense. But it's good for him. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. Pittsburgh, we've talked about
they
it.
got to get a quarterback.
They got to get a quarterback. Well, I'm not out on Pickett, or is it Pickett?
I'm
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 not.
close to out on him, but
I'm close to
he
out.
he could he could bring me back. I don't
I've
know,
seen
man. This was such a deflating year watching him play.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot of positive um plays from him
Yeah,
that I think he needs to get the consistency in that, and he could. I'm still not out on him. Something keeps me in on thinking he can be a good NFL quarterback. I don't know what it is, but they need offensive line. Like they need to get the offensive line. They need to shore up the defense. They need depth at defense because their defense, like their linebackers, T.J. Watt, he's a great linebacker, but he's
yeah,
always getting hurt.
yeah. When you're pulling
Always.
Miles Jack off the couch and guys
Yeah,
like that, it's.
exactly.
Tomlin's good, but you can only work so many miracles.
Yeah, which is why I think Tomlin kind of like he's working the miracles, and that's why they're keeping him. Plus, Pittsburgh's very slow to fire their head coach. Like they've had
Yeah,
what, like four head coaches in their entire history.
yeah. I mean, a lot of them have been pretty successful, right? But
Hmm.
but slow success, not like a shitload of championships. You know, just good like Tomlin, man. I mean, a lot of winning seasons.
Let me see if I can find the list. I'm curious. List of Steelers head coaches. Okay, so they've had more than four, but like this is going back to 1933. But since 33, they've had 16 total coaches. Um, a lot of the coaches back in the 30s were like a year, 2 years, and then like when that was when they were the Pittsburgh Pirates, and when it became the Steelers, they had like a couple, well, two in the 1 year, but then it's like a bunch of multi-year
Yeah,
coaches, and it looks like, I mean, but basically since the merger, they're on their since the AFL NFL merger, since the Super Bowl era, they've had 3 head coaches. They had Chuck Noll from 1969 to 1991. Then they had Cowher from 92 to 2006, and they've had Tomlin since.
Yeah, that's nuts, dude. That's nuts.
Yeah. So it's the model of like consistency and giving them the time.
Yeah.
And I mean Tomlin had of their coach of the 3 coaches they've had in the Super Bowl era, Tomlin has the best winning record too.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
And second most games coached. Because Cowher was 240, Chuck Noll 342, and Tomlin 275.
Gotcha.
Noll had a 566. Cowher won 62%, and Tomlin's won 63%.
Gotcha.
It's just he doesn't have the postseason success that the other coach, all the postseason success and the win record in the postseason as the other coaches did.
Yeah, and they're putting the heat on him now, right? Like the ownership made a comment about getting sick of not winning the playoff games.
Yeah, and that's the key with Tomlin is he has to get over that hurdle. But look at like Andy Reid. Andy Reid had a lot of
Well, he got to
regular
like
season.
4 NFC Championships games with Philly. He just wasn't getting to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
He had a lot of regular season success, but he didn't have the real postseason success until he got Mahomes.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right. They need a quarterback, but they draft too late this year to get a quarterback.
Fucking break the bank. Get fucking Kirk Cousins, man.
See, I'm hearing a lot that Cousins is going back to Minnesota.
Whatever, dude. Money talks. Money talks.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh has the 20th overall pick.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're hard pressed to get a franchise quarterback that's going to be effective in year 1 at that spot, right? But
exactly.
Yeah, I just think they got to do something, man. I don't know. I just and maybe Pickett just needs another year. I don't know. I just for how much hype there was around him after the preseason, he fell so flat in the regular season, man. It was just, and I don't think it's all his fault. Like you talk about the offensive line, but the games that I saw, it just seemed like he did not push the ball down the field at all, man. He was like Captain fucking check down like every play.
Yeah, and I hear that, but also like the offensive line couldn't block shit. So
I get it. You're defending him. I got you.
So, but apparently the interesting thing about Cousins is Minnesota cannot use the franchise tag on him because of when his contract, quote, voids.
Okay.
So it voids on March 13th. So they can't use the franchise tag on him. So he's guaranteed to be a free agent. But everything I'm reading is he wants to stay in Minnesota. Minnesota is looking to keep him around. So,
well, that's good because forever they've not wanted him there, right? It's like every year they're blaming him for their problems.
Right.
And now the one year that they can't blame him for the problems, they're like, oh no, we want him. We want him.
I think it's it's more of a who else are they going to get?
I agree, but that's also why I think if you're a team like Pittsburgh or any team that needs a quarterback and you don't have a high draft pick, you should be trying to see if you can get a piece of the KC1 action, right? Because he is going to be a free agent, and so you never know.
Mm-hmm. You see, but what I'm reading rumors wise is to allow Pickett to develop. Pittsburgh's gonna go hard after Russell.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's just what I'm reading. Rumor. I mean, it's we'll see what actually happens because sometimes rumors are just rumors.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's some guy's bullshit opinion that turns into, oh, it was a rumor. But I'm seeing a lot of Russ talk for Pittsburgh.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. I just don't know what he's got left, right? Because he wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire.
He
I
was
mean, this year was better than the year before, but you know, and maybe you got him with Arthur Smith. Maybe that helps him or whatever. I don't know. I don't know.
but then again, Arthur Smith couldn't turn around. What's his name?
Ritter.
Ritter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had Mariota. Like when they had Mariota, Mariota was doing well. Mariota's Mariota, but like he did okay, and then he trailed off, and then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna start Ritter now," and Mariota's like, "Fuck you, I'm out."
Yeah. So Russ
Or
was
I
at
mean,
66%, 3,070 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a 98 rating. So not bad, but only 3,000 passing yards is just, it's fucking super low in today's NFL, man.
well, that and they had decent receivers there too.
Yeah, they had a lot of weapons.
Yeah, like I mean, Judy and Mims were their two, and Sutton. Like,
Yep.
I mean,
Sutton
right
was their
there.
touchdown machine. Yep.
Yeah, like those like you have three good receivers. They didn't really have a tight end, but like, it doesn't make sense why he doesn't have more yards with those receivers there.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, he didn't play in like the last. He only played in 15 of the 17 games.
Still, that's 200 yards a game, man.
Yeah,
That's low.
that's really low.
And it's not like he had like fucking 800 rushing yards.
No, he had 341.
Which is, that's more than I would have expected
Hmm.
because the year before they were trying to keep him in the pocket.
Yeah, but I mean, like total, the Broncos didn't have that many yards. If you really think about it, they
Yeah.
had 30,
They won a
50,
lot of tight games.
5,300. What's that? 5,300 divided by 17. That's like 300 yards a game.
Yeah, three or something. Yeah, it's not a lot.
So 3,566 and 1,810. That was 17. 316.2 yards a game. That's nothing.
No.
There's nothing at all. So you can understand why Russ didn't have the passing yards if you looking at that perspective, but he should based on who they have there.
Yep.
Anyways, we'll see what happens. We'll have a show or two after the Super Bowl about the draft and projected offseason moves. I'm interested in to see who
Heck yeah.
Washington picks up to be their head coach. But
Yeah, big time. All right, what else you got, man?
that was about it.
That's all she wrote on the news.
Yeah.
All right, well, we can. Well, I mean, I was gonna say we go to the Pro Bowl preview, but let's talk about the championship games because we wanted to come back talk about the Lions. Maybe we start with the Baltimore Kansas City game. How about that?
Yeah, we can. Like Baltimore, Kansas City. Like the big issue with that game really is how is the play calling. Both games really the second half play calling was atrocious. Baltimore, they had the most rushes all in the regular season. Top in the NFL, most rushing plays run, and then they turn around in the in the AFC Championship game And I want to say that they total in the second half ran six
Okay.
running plays. I want to say it was six. I'll do the math in a minute. But total in the game, they didn't have that many designed rushes. Um, I apologize. Let me rephrase. In the entire game, they only gave the ball to Gus Edwards and Justice Hill their two running backs a total of 6 times. They had a
Yeah.
total of 8 carries the entire game that were designed carries that weren't scrambles by Lamar. Lamar anytime with Lamar Jackson, if he throws 35 or more passes in the game, the Ravens are 17-13.
Yeah, they were putting the ball in his hand, and they deviated from what got him that far.
Yeah. So that was the big issue. And I thought also, though, it's not talked about that much, is Kansas City, they came out in the first half and they had the aggressive play calling, and then in the second half they really went heavy rush. And yeah, that was kind of their bread and butter, but it's not talked about because they won the game, but they took the foot off the gas a lot in the second half and
Okay.
didn't do didn't went away from the game plan they had in the first half and weren't that aggressive team that they were in the first half. With Kansas City, like their wide receivers had decent games.
Yeah.
They didn't they went away from, like, Kansas City, like when they struggled, it was their receivers were dropping the ball and they had penalties. I don't remember for sure on this, but I don't I don't remember for sure. I'm trying to look it up and I'm talking. They had a total of 3 penalties the entire game. Looking at it, 3 penalties for 30 yards, which is abnormal for them when which so they really shored up the that side, and then their wide receivers. I don't remember many, if at all, drops in the game. Where the game turned, it was really the best drive for Baltimore in the second half, and it's fucking Zay Flowers.
Yep.
Uh, two of them, two boneheaded fucking plays by Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
One of them was a great defensive play. I take that back. The fumble, that was a great defensive play, knocking the ball out of Zay Flowers' hand, which went out the end zone, or it was recovering the zone. I don't remember. I think it went out the end zone, which I hate that rule. But there was a play, I think it was the drive before that, or was it 2 drives before that, where they had like a ridiculous catch by Zay Flowers. It was a big play. I'm trying to find it real quick, because where it was it, I thought it was in the second half. Yeah, it was in the second half. It was on the same. It was on the same drive as his fumble. So it was the same drive, and it was the best drive in the second half, where Zay Flowers had a 54-yard reception, and he fucking, I forget who, it was Snead. He like kind of pushed Snead down and spun the ball and stood over him,
Oh
getting a
yeah.
taunting penalty,
Yeah.
which kind of killed the momentum of that drive, which it ended up turning out they almost scored, and then he fumbled the ball. But if first of all, if that taunting penalty doesn't that took them from the 10 to the 25, so the 15-yard penalty, and then you have a couple plays in there where they scored, so where they would have scored. It was Zay Flowers had an 8-yard reception, so they got back to the 10 before the Zay Flowers fumble play, so they would have scored on those other plays if they weren't pushed back 25 yards or 15 yards to the 25.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, right? You never know because you're playing with a different field, but I know what you
Well, no,
mean.
because on second and 20 or second and 10, Zay Flowers right there had an 11-yard had a 14-yard reception.
Yeah, but they might not call that same play if they're on the 10-yard line, right?
But they did. They did. It was the same exact play
But you're
that
saying they got pulled back from the 10 to the
they got
25.
pulled back from the 10 to the
Yeah,
25. But the Zay Flowers fumble play
yeah.
was the same play or a similar play to the Zay Flowers 2 plays earlier 14-yard reception that he was
Okay,
pushed out of bounds at the 11.
okay.
So there were two similar plays there where they probably would have ran, and then they had the fumble play.
Yeah.
So it
And
was
that was just
just
karma biting them in the ass.
yeah, exactly. And that and I heard an analytics guy talk about I forget, I think it was PFF or one of these analytics NFL analytics guys, where the analytics models don't take into account momentum because
Hmm.
there's no statistical evidence of it being a factor. Like you can't quantify it
Yeah.
statistically, so the models don't take into effect. But I think 100% momentum plays a role there
Oh, big time. I
when you
believe it.
have
Yeah.
a big fucking reception, and then your boneheaded wide receiver.
Yeah, penalty takes some of the air out of it.
Yeah. Outside of that, I thought Baltimore kind of shot themselves in the foot with their play calls and not running the ball like at all. Kansas City played the no home game. Like they like I said, they shored up the drops, they shored up the penalties, and um, but Baltimore kind of shot themselves in both feet with Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
And he'll grow up and he'll learn from it hopefully. But it's like, come on, dude, you can't do that shit in the playoffs. You can't stand over a guy after you have a huge play.
Didn't he push him down?
Yeah, he pushed him down, spun the ball like right
Yeah.
next to him, and stood there like, "Mm." Like,
Yeah.
come
I mean, Lamar wasn't exactly stellar in that game either, right? 54% completion, a
right, but
75.5 quarterback rating.
that's that that goes to my point is he th- with Lamar he threw the ball way too many times. They put it on his arm
Yeah.
instead of going with what got got them there, which was passing. During the regular season, I wanted to look at the regular season stats because they rushed the ball like a ridiculous amount this year.
Yeah.
2022 regular season, they had
Yeah, and he lost a fumble
541.
too, man.
Yeah, they had 541 rushing plays this season and 494 passing plays. They did not the exact opposite. They fucking went way the other way with Lamar
Yep.
in this game, where Lamar had 37 passes and they had what total of 16 rushing plays.
Well, and the Chiefs' defense was solid too. They got an interception, they had 4 sacks, and they even recovered a fumble on Lamar. And so, I mean, some of it, you could say, hey, Lamar, you got to be smarter with the football. Some of it's okay. The defense was really freaking good that game, but yeah, they should have spread the love a little bit more with that running game because that's what worked for them. And I get it; they had a lot of running backs get hurt over the course of the season, right? But they
Mm,
kept doing it, and it kept working.
right, but per game, Gus Edwards had 18. averaged 19. Let's see, 17, 28, 18 and a half rushes per game, and
No, the running backs, not Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards, yeah,
No,
rushes.
dude, he wasn't the starter all year, man.
He had 198 carries in 17 games this year. I'm looking at the stats right now.
Yeah, that's not 18 a carry, or 18 a game.
18 a
That's
game.
like 10 plus a game. 198 in 17 games. That's a little more than 10 a game.
No, I did the wrong way. But yeah, but a little more than 10 a game.
That's actually still pretty good because he was splitting carries with a lot of other guys.
Yeah, but that's where
Yeah, for them to only
my
have
my
six
point.
between him and one other guy is super low.
Yeah, so if you take out Lamar's rushes, because I don't know how many
Yeah.
of Lamar's carries were design runs, but you take out Lamar's, and
Yeah, so you got
they average
198 for Gus Edwards,
right. So you take
47
out
for Mitchell, 84 for Hill, 26 for Gordon. Oh man, they got Zay Flowers had some. Well, Huntley, I would count him. Dobbins had 22. Wait,
22
is that right?
yards.
No, that's
Hit 22
yards.
yards. So total this year, taking out Lamar's rushes, everybody else I'm considering that a
Kenyon
rush.
Drake got in there. I didn't
Yeah,
know he was
they had
still in the game, dude.
they had they outside of Lamar Jackson, because I didn't dive into how
Yeah,
many of Lamar Jackson's rushes were design runs versus scrambles. They had 393 rushes this season, averaging 23. Say it's 23 design running plays this season,
sure.
handing the ball off, not leaving it in Lamar's hand. 23 plays this season
Per game.
per game. 23 rushes. Passes this season, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
do straight attempts and not passes. They averaged 29 attempts this season
Okay.
per game. To have
Yeah, you're
three
almost
or
50-50.
six, you're almost 50-50, and they went to, so that's 43. Even counting Lamar's, they're not even close to 50-50. They're like 75.
Yeah.
75 pass, and that's way too much. And like I said, with Lamar throwing more than 35 attempts a game, it's their win-loss record in his career is 17-13.
Yeah. They lost. I don't know, dude. I thought Mahomes and the Chiefs, Andy Reid, those guys, they just figure it out. I like Mahomes, just he's more clutch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought it was big when they got Valdez Scantling going again a couple weeks ago. And I know he's only had a couple catches a game, right? But it's a couple catches a game where you don't have to rely on the younger guys that have been making the mistakes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's coming at the right time. And and yeah, I mean they're in the Super Bowl again. But all right, let's talk about the Lions game, man, because that's the one that you've done a lot of the homework on, right?
Yeah.
So break
So
that down for me.
okay. So I'm gonna first the one of the big issues with the Lions game is they went away from what was effective in the first half. They, like I told you before, and they ran total 29 rushing plays in the game. 21 of
Yeah.
those 29 were in the first half.
Yeah, and I think they were saying they had the most rushing yards in a game against the 49ers all year, and they did it in the first half.
Yeah. And then in the second half, they went away from that and they went more passing plays. And like, I don't have the count of how many plays they ran per half, but I know they ran 8 total rushing plays in the second half.
Yeah.
One of them was a fumble. One of them was an ill-advised call.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Then you had the drops. You had Jamal Williams had a drop.
Jameson. Yeah.
Jameson Williams, not Jamal Williams. Thank you. Jameson Williams
Not known for his hands, but it still stings.
Yeah. Jameson Williams had a drop. and also Craig Reynolds had a drop,
Josh
and
Reynolds. Yeah,
Josh
Josh. Those were
Craig.
the ones. Those were the ones that hurt the most, right, James? Because they
Yeah.
were on critical downs.
Mm. Well, I don't. Jamal's wasn't as
Jameson's
critical.
wasn't. Jameson's
Jameson's.
his.
Thank
I
you. Why
don't
do I
know.
keep
His might
wanting
have
to
been on
call?
a third down or something, but Josh Reynolds, man, I mean, you're talking fourth down plays. One of them we talked about the pass wasn't exactly perfect, but he still should have caught it, man. I mean, it was just like ah. And him and Goff had a good connection all year. I mean, their connection goes back to their time with the Rams, but it's like ah, it just it was very out of character for what we had seen from these guys all year long.
Yeah. I'm looking. What I
Craig
know
Reynolds is
is.
our running like
I know.
third string running
No,
back
no,
or whatever.
no, no. I know. I know. Jameson Williams was had a drop, but I'm not. I'm looking for it on the play. The play by. Oh, here it is. It was it was 1st and 10.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But it was a deep pass. So I mean, oh, that's what it was. He had broke free and he got behind the defense and
Oh
he
yeah,
dropped the ball.
yeah.
And
He
it
he slowed down,
yeah,
and if he would have kept going, it looked like it would have been an easy deal. And yeah, I
mhm,
got you. I remember now.
yeah. That's what it was. It was a key play in that sense, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a key like it wasn't like a big down play. But Reynolds, why do I keep wanting to call him Craig, and I don't know why, because
It's
for
because
some reason.
Craig's the other Reynolds.
Right, right, but it's I think it's Craig Reynolds made the team, and he was like one of the stars of Hard Knocks, wasn't he? Like one of the guys they
Yeah,
focused in
yeah, he
on.
was for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he
So
was
that's
like our kick returner when Khalif Raymond went down.
yeah. So so I'm just gonna say Reynolds because I keep wanting to call him Craig, even though I know his name's not Craig. Had had a drop. His drop was critical. It was a little bit behind him. Part of that was because the offensive line didn't hold up that well, but also St. Brown had a
Yeah,
drop. Had
that's
had
that's
that.
that's the one I was thinking of was the St. Brown drop, and
Yeah, St.
I
Brown.
just found it, man. Yeah,
Yeah, and that
another
was
very uncharacteristic thing.
yeah. So so you take away that. And then there's the controversy of, well, should Campbell? I almost called him Dan Quinn. I don't know what the fuck's up with me and names today. Should Campbell have gone for it on 4th down? And I heard a lot of analytics people talking about the numbers and the win probability, and so part of it is with 4th down, the go for it versus the kick the field goal. Their analytics models taken an average kicker, and on an average kicker, it was the first time up 14, which was what was it, fourth and
Keep talking. I gotta stand
fourth
up,
and
but I
two.
can. Yeah.
Was fourth and two. Um, the go for it had going for it and making it, the win probability was 0.02% higher. So it was really a 50-50 proposition for going for it and kicking the field goal with an average kicker. And the second one, which was the St. Brown one, it was 4th and 3. There was a 0.03% favorite to more favored to going for it versus kicking it. It's taking into account an average kicker and an average chance of making it, or completing, going for
Yeah,
it and
converting the forest. Yep.
converting it. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. With the Lions, under Dan Quinn, and more specifically this season, on 4th and 3 or less, going for it, they converted 80% of the time.
It's high.
Also, when you look at, you factor in the kicker, which was Badgley. So the first one, the St. Brown one, they were 4th and 3 at the 30, and the first one they were 4th and 2 at San Francisco's 28. So that's a 17, so 45 and a 47-yard field goal. In that range in his career, Badgley is 52%.
Super low, man.
Super low for a kicker. Since 2020, Badgley, and I can't remember if it was 38 or 35%
Yeah, way low.
making those. So when you factor in the probability of when you Detroit's history on making it on 4th and 3 and fewer under Campbell, and Badgley's conversion on field goal, making the field goal percentage in that range of 38%, analytics actually heavily would favor going for it. Like the win probability of going for it and making it is going for it and making it, or kicking the field goal and making it, versus going for it, not making it, kicking the field goal and not making the field goal. But the win probability for going for it increases even further, and it's heavily favored to that. Plus, when you factor in the 38%, so it's more likely that Badgley would have missed those 2 field goals than made one of the 2.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And that's where the issue came, but where with Detroit, Badgley, well, then you argue, well, why is he your kicker? Well, didn't they have a different
Riley
kicker?
Patterson.
Riley Patterson that got
They got
injured.
rid of Riley Patterson because they didn't like his lack of leg strength. He was accurate, but he couldn't kick the 50-plus yarders.
Right. Couldn't kick the 50-plus yarders, but he made those field goals in this range. If you have a different kicker, that decision might be different. If you have a kicker that is more consistent making field goals in this range, that decision might be different for Campbell.
Well, and the crazy thing is that Badgley kicked like the 52 or 54-yarder or whatever to win the Rams game.
Right. But it's this specific range, 50, above 50 and below
40 or 45 or whatever.
40, I think it is. He has, and I don't have
like a dead spot in his range.
Yeah, this is just like literally a dead spot in his range. Where,
yeah,
I mean, since 2020, he in this range. I think it was from 30. I think it was from 38 to 48 yards. He was 38%.
So what are you saying? We're going to draft a kicker this year?
What I'm saying is, well, we need a new kicker, a different kicker. You need a kicker that you can trust to make that field goal.
Absolutely.
And I think the lack of trust in the kicker maybe drove the decision to go for it, especially considering the success rate that Detroit has had going for it at that yardage to gain.
I got you.
So I'm not as upset about not.
No, you make a good case, man. You make a good case.
What I'm upset about is the play call. I'm upset about there's one particular play that they called that really, really ticked me off, and it made no fucking sense. You know what play I'm gonna talk about? 3rd and goal from the 1, with about a minute left in the game. You hand the ball off to Montgomery. He doesn't make it. Great. If he makes it in, if he makes a touchdown, maybe, well, we're not going to be talking about it because Detroit's going to have the timeout,
yep.
So San Francisco can't exactly really run out the clock. But by handing the ball off, you're saying, okay, we're relying on converting the onside kick and successfully kicking the onside kick and not touching the ball fucking 1 yard too soon anyways, which so if we would have recovered it, it wouldn't have fucking mattered. Josh Reynolds. You're saying I'm going to rely on the onside kick because, but overall in the second half, that they shouldn't have called that running play. They shouldn't have called a lot of the passing plays I called because, I started with, they only ran the ball 8 times
and one of them was at the wrong time.
And one of them was at the wrong time, and one of them was a fumble.
Yeah. I mean, the fumble, you can't do anything about that, right? But
can't do anything about that. But it was just like the perfect flow of events for San Francisco that gave them the fucking win. Like you had you're up by 14, you go for it on 4th down, don't make it. San Francisco turns around and scores a touchdown. Next play, you fumble the ball. San Francisco turns around and scores a touchdown. Next drive, I'm sorry, not next play, next drive. Next drive after that, you go 3 and out. San Francisco scores a field goal and takes the lead. That flow of events, those drives right there is what gave San Francisco the game. Yeah, if with the rushing play in the last drive, that may not have mattered as much if you didn't have that stretch of plays or stretch of like you didn't have the 3 out, so you didn't have the execution. I liked the play call on both on both 4th downs. I liked the play call. The first one to Reynolds was slightly behind him. He should have caught the ball, but it was slightly behind him because the line gave in to San Francisco's rush and Goff got pressure. The second time to Amon St. Brown, it was kind of it wasn't really a drop. Thinking about it, it wasn't a drop by St. Brown. It was Goff was before he could even figure out where he was going with the ball. He was under pressure and having to get out of the pocket. And he threw it to St. Brown, and he threw it a little. He short armed it and threw it like short. So St. Brown was trying to dive back for the ball, and it didn't quite get to it. So it was the execution on those plays, not running the ball in the second half, which they had the success in the first half.
Yep.
And then the ill-timed rushing play that they actually called that ultimately led to the downfall of the Lions.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah. And then there was that crazy ass, IU catch off the guy's helmet. We didn't talk about that.
I didn't even get to that one. That was the drive after the first the drop by Reynolds. That drive where fucking deep ball overthrew overthrew Ayuk as who was it? Vildor?
Kindle Vildor, yeah.
Kindle Vildor was like kind of diving back, looking like he'd catch the ball. It hit his face mask at the right angle to bounce back up into Ayuk's hands. It was a little bit ahead of him.
Yeah.
But it was like that bounce right there. And right there, I told you before, like at that play, it felt like the momentum 100% shifted to San Francisco.
Totally. Yeah.
It's because you had the couple plays before that, like there was the second play of that drive. So a couple plays before that, you stopped Detroit on a 4th and 3 because Reynolds didn't catch the ball. 2 plays later, you have this freak 51-yard reception by Ayuk.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have happened, and then they're able to score 3 plays later because it was 3rd down they scored, and it was a decent like the momentum completely shifted to San Francisco, and I think momentum's a real thing, even though it's analytics doesn't show it as a real thing because you can't quantify it. That kind of killed it, and the drive right after that freak play was the fumble drive. So the next play, Detroit had the ball.
Yeah, we just
Jameer
got
Gibbs fumbled
stripped
it.
down with momentum. It was
Yeah,
nasty. Yeah.
momentum was gone.
Yeah, I'm
So
still
those are
super
my thoughts.
happy. Still super happy for him. It just was a heartbreaking way for it to end. Um, it's almost like if they were losing the whole game, I don't know that it would have been as hard to handle, right?
Hmm.
Because so many people just expected them to get their asses kicked.
Yeah,
But the fact that they were up by 17 and then let it slip away, that was where it was like, oh man, like we actually had a fucking chance. And it just, it felt like an old Lions meltdown.
yeah.
And, we've seen it so many times over the years.
But like in the first half, like it felt like everything was going right for the
I
Lions
know,
too.
dude.
Like
I know.
San Francisco's first drive, they stop them on third down, they kick a field goal, they miss the field goal.
Yeah.
The turnaround, the Lions score. Yeah, yeah. San Francisco scored. Like a couple drives later, you have the Lions intercept the ball and turn around and score a touchdown to go up by 14, and then San Francisco the next two drives is San Francisco 3-and-out, Detroit a 17 play 5-minute drive for a field goal to go up by 17
Yeah.
um, at the half. It's like everything was going right in the Lions' favor, where I was starting to like, holy shit, this is
Yep.
this actually happening? Like, is this a fucking
Yeah.
dream? Like,
We're going to Vegas. Oh!
and then everything swung the other way in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bummer, my man. But I like the way you broke it down. It's good to have those stats just to kind of talk about, you know, was it the right call? Was it not? I think, just fundamentally, you look at Dan Campbell's been doing it all year. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of hard to stop now. But, there was a method to the madness. It wasn't just a stubborn decision. It was probably a very well informed decision
Yeah,
that he made. So,
exactly. And it it's unfortunate that like the stats line up that way. Well, it's fortunate really for like Dan Campbell, like kind of take the heat off him, but it's unfortunate for the Lions that you don't have a kicker that you can trust in that range.
yeah.
And to think that having a kicker having a kicker, granted, the Rams game, he kicked that 57-yard field goal. Maybe a different kicker doesn't make it, but you need a kicker that you can trust in those intermediate range kicks because you get a lot of those in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that having that kicker you can trust there was the difference between going to the Super Bowl and going home.
Yeah, it was a very unfortunate situation. All right, man. I don't know. I don't really have much else to say about it. It just it's like I'm still processing it, but
Yeah.
um yeah. What do you think? You want to go to the Pro Bowl? All right, we're back, man. So, want to talk a little bit for Pro Bowl action?
All right, I'm ready to talk about the Pro Bowl.
Okay. So the the Pro Bowl, I think I covered some of this last year. Originally started back in 1938. Great idea, probably not properly executed, but the idea was that you were going to have two basically all-star teams, the best of the best, play against each other, and on paper that would have been amazing, but historically you've just had so many issues with it where um, a lot of the guys didn't want to play because they were afraid of getting hurt, where it didn't really add any value to their career. Um, and then, I forget whenever they switched it where it was before the Super Bowl, because wasn't it originally the week after the Super Bowl? And then, like, nobody was watching it, so they made it the week before the Super Bowl. And then all the players that were in the Super Bowl definitely didn't play in the Pro Bowl because now it was before the Super Bowl. And now we don't even have a fucking full contact game. It's like flag football plus a bunch of skills challenges. And so, um, I don't know, man. Like, I used to really, really like the Pro Bowl when it was a real full contact game in
Hmm.
Hawaii. It was like a nice atmosphere. The skills challenges were fun, but then the game at one point you could tell that it's like, there were still a number of guys that were trying, right? And it just never fully got there. And so, yeah, I think last year it was in Las Vegas. This year they brought it back to Orlando, which is where it had been, since they like brought it over from Hawaii. Um, bring it stateside and make it easier for people to get to and whatever else. Um, and so I didn't even look up the list of challenges, but I know that like last year there was dodgeball. Um,
I
you know,
I have the list of challenges. It's split between Thursday and Sunday. So you have precision passing, accuracy competition from with the quarterbacks, as hitting as many targets in 1 minute.
yeah, I
Best
think Derek
catch,
Carr was good at that last year, I want to say. Yeah.
best catch, which is going to be shown as a pre-recorded segment.
Oh yeah,
Um,
so that's like their version of a slam dunk contest, right? You get to do a
yeah,
crazy trick catch. Yeah.
right, but it's a little bit different because they're doing special catches around various Orlando landmarks.
Oh, all right. Yeah,
Closest
so
to the
that's why it's
pin,
pre-recorded.
yeah, closest to the pin. Golfing accuracy. I don't know what the fuck that has to do with football.
Yeah.
It's something called high stakes, which is a multi-round competition in which players attempt to catch the most punts. Okay. Dodgeball. Four teams of five players representing defensive and offensive selections from each conference. Kick tack toe, which is basically hitting a giant tic tac toe board. Get three symbols
Hey, you got to get those
across.
punters and kickers in somehow, right?
Yeah, that's with kickers.
Okay.
You have the Madden NFL head to head, which two players from each conference will play the Madden NFL 24 video game
Oh,
using the
jeez.
official Pro Bowl rosters.
Okay.
Gridiron Gauntlet, which is competing basically an obstacle relay course. Tug of War, five players in each conference. Move the chains, which I thought that was interesting last year, where they have like a wall. They have to move 3,000 pounds of weights off the wall and then pull the wall that is 2,000 pounds across the finish line. And then 3 games of 7-on-7 flag football.
Yep.
Those are the competitions this year. I tried to really quickly go back and look up when it changed from after the Super Bowl to before the Super Bowl, and then I realized that it initially, you said it started in what year?
38, long time
38.
ago.
When it initially started, it was the NFL champion versus the NFL All-Stars.
Oh gosh, man, I don't even remember that. Okay.
And that was for 5 years, and then from 43 to 50, it didn't
Yeah, because of the war
they
or
didn't have
whatever.
it.
Or
Yeah,
not,
because
no.
the war.
Yeah. Post-war, maybe. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't
Yeah. Either
exactly
way.
say.
Either way. Yeah, yeah.
And then when it came back, it was NFL Eastern Conference versus the NFL Western Conference. And then it was AFC NFC starting in 1970, or AFC NFC. And I'm trying to glance. Apparently, there was you had various iterations of it. We had various different things that they tried, like from 2013 to 2015, they tried to do non-conference Pro Bowls where you draft players.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Yep. Yeah, and so then right now they're still doing Eli coaching one and Peyton coaching the other, right? So Eli's coaching the NFC and Peyton's
Is that?
coaching the AFC. Because I heard the twist for this year was that that's for the flag football. And I heard the twist for this year was that they added offensive coordinators. And so one of them's got Wes Welker and the other one's got Keenan McCardell as their offensive coordinators. And like, I saw something like Wes Welker's got like 30 plays in his playbook for the flag football game or something. And so they were saying that the league wanted to start doing that so that they could bring in more former players to be a part of the action. And so I thought, you know, on the surface it sounds nice, but I'm just still bummed out because it's such a different thing now.
Yeah, and I'm glancing at it, and it's kind of besides last year being at Allegiant Stadium when it came back, it's been in at Camping World where it is this year. Um, and aside from 2014, it looks like it was in Hawaii starting in 1979.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I just remember it was there for a long time.
from 79 to 2014, I don't have the notes as to why it wasn't in Hawaii, but it was in Arizona in 2014. And
Okay.
then 2015 was Hawaii. And then 2016 it started in Tampa, and it was been at Tampa, I'm sorry, Orlando, with the exception of last year's, or not last year's, 2021 and 2022.
Okay.
They were at Allegiant Stadium.
Gotcha. Yeah, and
I'm
I
seeing
think
if I can
I think one of
find.
the things I like about it is and I don't remember if it was always this way or what, but so like basically the way the players are selected is that you've got the fans get to vote, the players get to vote, and the coaches get to vote. And so they're saying that like each group counts for 1/3 of the total votes to figure out who's going to get into the Pro Bowl. But then the problem is once you have your Pro Bowl rosters, you get so many alternates because these
Mhm.
guys don't want to participate that the players that actually end up going are, it's like the one year we had like freaking Huntley or whatever, the
Yeah, that
backup
was last year.
quarterback. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that is it's kind of depressing for me, right? It's like, man, like you don't even have like the real starting quarterback going. And then not only did you not um, like replace him with a stud, you're replacing him with a backup. It's like,
Mhm.
oh man, it just I don't know. So there's some flaws to it, obviously, right?
Yeah. So in 2010 was when it started being before the Super Bowl instead of after the Super Bowl.
Okay, good to know.
Um, but you're saying that, and I was looking at the rosters this this year, and I was looking at the alternates, especially at quarterback, and one of the one of the alternates that was selected at quarterback, I thought should have been a Pro Bowler.
Oh yeah,
So
C.J. Stroud.
CJ Stroud, and
Yeah, I'm
then
looking at it right now.
also with the NFC, I thought the season Baker had, I thought he had a better season than Matthew Stafford and should have been a Pro Bowler over Stafford.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'd have to look up the stats on that one. I know Stafford, especially near the end of the year, really started lighting it up. But um, yeah, I mean, Baker, it was. I thought he did good too. Yeah, and I mean, so he's a replacement now for Prescott, but yeah. And then Geno Smith replacing Stafford. See, Geno Smith's a tough one because I didn't think he had really even had a decent year, but I mean, it was nothing like last year, I guess, you know?
Yeah, so Baker had, and I just looked up the stats. Baker had a 364 a 64.3% completion percentage, 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, compared to I'll do yards per game because Stafford played 2 less games. Stafford did have more yards per game, but he had
Yeah, I'm sure he had a shitload more attempts too.
he had 521 attempts in 15 games versus Baker's 566 in 17 games.
Okay, that's not
And
that far off.
it's not that far off. And Stafford had 24 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So it's comparable. Looking at the stats, they're comparable. Um, so I'm not.
Oh
I don't.
man, Nick Ballore made it as an alternate. Go Central Michigan.
So I'm not gonna argue it as much. Based on the stats. I like looking at the face of it and what I remember on the season. I thought I thought Baker had better season, but actually looking at the stats, it's they're similar enough to
Yeah, and
where
and the
I'm not.
stats aren't the whole story, right? But I know what you mean.
Yeah. So the players that are playing in the Super Bowl from that can't play in the game that were selected to the Pro Bowl is Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes is going to be Pro Bowler. Offensively, Travis Kelce, obviously in the AFC, Travis Kelce is going to be a Pro Bowler. Uh, Joe Thuney, who plays for Kansas City, and Creed Humphrey, and that's on the offensive side. On the defensive side, Chris Jones, and that's it for the Super Bowl for the AFC. For the NFC, Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Trent Williams, and then on the defensive side, Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Fred Warner, Trevarius Ward, and that's it on the defensive side. So not too bad for players for the AFC for players going to Super Bowl. The NFC you had quite a bit, and then you had the players that opted out. And there's a lot of alternates going to be playing in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, one thing I think we pointed out last year, which is probably good to point out this year, especially because Detroit is on the good part of this list, but you've got the 49ers having 9 Pro Bowlers. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, man. And then you've got Baltimore with 7,
Baltimore had
Dallas.
8.
Oh, I wonder if this list just maybe one got added as an alternate or something. I'm looking at the
Yeah,
NFL.com article. They're
one got
just saying
added as
7.
alternate. Kevin
Okay,
Kevin Kevin Zietler got added
gotcha.
a guard. So 7.
All right, and so yeah, then Dallas has 7, Miami 6, Philly 6, Cleveland 5, Kansas City 5, but also our very own Detroit Lions got 5, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, and maybe
So
6 with St. Brown being added as an alternate, I guess.
so 7 with the alternates for Detroit, and actually Dallas taking into account the alternates had 10. San
Shit.
Francisco 9, Philadelphia 8, the Lions 7, Baltimore 8 with the alternates, Cleveland 7, Miami 6, Kansas City 5. Those just a quick rundown of that. So Detroit alternates that were selected for the Pro Bowl. Gibbs was an alternate. St. Brown was an alternate. So those are the 2 alternates
Okay.
and then alternates. As I said, it was Zietler for Baltimore. Dallas's alternates. Let me see: Ferguson, Tyler Smith, DeMarcus Lawrence. What's 3? That's it for alternates that were for Dallas that jumped them up so high.
Gotcha. Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, I'm just going through my notes, man. I mean, that's like pretty much all I got on it for this year. Is
So a
there?
couple things, a couple
Yeah.
things on it. Like at quarterback, I don't see. Like I understand Tua, he's popular and this and that. I the season that Patrick Mahomes had, even though he's a perpetual Pro Bowler, the season he had was not a typical Patrick Mahomes season.
Nope.
This season, Kansas City relied on the run way more than usual and
And
didn't put the
defense.
ball
Yeah.
in defense. And in the season that CJ Stroud had, I thought Stroud should have been a Pro Bowler over Mahomes. I know that's blasphemous to some people.
No, I'm with you, dude. I mean, you look at what he had to work with. Stroud came out of nowhere,
Hmm.
got a team that nobody expected to do anything, and frickin' carried them into the playoffs, man. That was frickin' amazing.
But it's the same with the thing with Houston, and I want to see how many. So before the alternates, Houston only had one Pro Bowler,
Yeah.
and like the alternates, their two alternates was that were selected were Stroud on the offense and Will Anderson on the defense.
Who was the
Both,
guy that was selected before?
uh,
Tunsil, maybe?
yes, Tunsil.
Okay.
So so both those players, Stroud and Anderson, yeah, they were rookies, but I thought Anderson had a ridiculous rookie year, and Stroud had a ridiculous
Yeah.
year for a quarterback. Like did he go like 7 games without an interception to start the season?
Yeah, I mean, he was in the MVP conversation for a
Yeah,
long time.
he was in the MVP conversation, and but he was not one of
You
the
should be in the
original Pro
Pro
Bowl
Bowl.
selections.
If you're in
Yeah,
the MVP conversation, you should be in the Pro Bowl.
yeah, and but that follows along. Let me get back to my stats page with with uh with Stroud. Like he he missed two games.
Yeah, it was something like that. Two or three, maybe just two.
So he missed two. He and probably part of a third. So he had missing 2 games. He had 75 less passing yards than Patrick Mahomes on 100 less attempts
Yeah, as a rookie.
as a rookie. He had 23 touchdowns and 5 interceptions this season, where Patrick Mahomes had 27 and 14. Keeping in mind, Stroud missed 2 games and part of a third because it was like at least half. It was at least half, 2.5 games
Yeah,
as a rookie. He had a 63% completion percentage where Mahomes had a 67. Okay, I'll give you that, but he still had he had 82 less completions than Mahomes in 2 less games, but 75 less yards. Yards per game, Mahomes was 261, where Stroud was 273.
yeah.
It just does not make sense to me why Mahomes was selected to the Pro Bowl based on what he had.
Popularity.
Popularity. If you look at it sacks wise, and Stroud was under pressure more than Mahomes too.
Yeah, it's a popularity contest to at least some degree.
Yeah, Stroud's rating was 100.8. Mahomes for the season was 92.6.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Anyways, I digress. But also with Will Anderson, I didn't understand why Will Anderson wasn't a Pro Bowler either.
Yeah, see, I'd have to look up his stats, see how his year turned out.
That's where I was looking. So it's Will Anderson.
7 sacks, 45 tackles, 16 assists. I mean and then he had some playoff stuff. Um, Actually, did he have anything in the playoffs? No, they're just not showing it on here. Either way, I mean that's 45 tackles as a rookie edge guy, 7 sacks. It's respectable, man. I guess I'd have to see how he compared to some of the other guys that did get in ahead of him, right?
Yeah, and that's where. So Trey Hendrickson as an alternate makes no sense with 17 and a half sacks.
I like Trey Hendrickson, man. He's good.
So Crosby had 14 and a half, and where's Myles Garrett? Myles Garrett was
So there were some big guys in there.
yeah. Myles Garrett had 14 sacks. So yeah, okay. I can
In sacks are the big stat, right, for
yeah,
those positions.
especially for defensive linemen, sacks is the big sack. With Hendrickson, um, Hendrickson and Garrett having so many sacks, and Crosby like 14 sacks, so they had double or more sacks. I can live with Anderson not being a Pro
Yeah,
Bowler
now that you see
at the
that,
position.
yeah.
Now that I see the stats from feel wise and what I heard in the season, I forgot about Hendrickson being so high up there in sacks.
Yeah.
I was initially thinking that Anderson should have been a Pro Bowler over Hendrickson,
Oh, I got you. Okay.
but looking at the sacks, I disagree there. I also
Yeah, Hendrickson's been a great signing for Cincinnati. That is what we thought we were getting when we signed Trey Flowers to that massive fucking contract out of New England. And it
yeah.
blew up in our faces. Since he signed the big one with Hendrickson coming out of New Orleans, and he's been worth every penny of it getting better every year, man.
This is true. This is true. And I don't outside of like those like two, like looking at it, like it's really and I take back thinking on the Anderson one. So it's really that one with CJ Stroud. The two alternates at quarterback, at least they got starters for most of the year as alternates. Gardner Minshew,
Yeah.
who played well after Richardson went down and almost took Indianapolis to. Did they wait? Yeah, Indianapolis was in it like right up until the end.
Yeah.
Almost took Indianapolis to the playoffs. Just really missing it is like if they beat Houston the last game of the year, Indianapolis would have made the playoffs. They would have won the division. So, I mean, have them that close, I can't argue it there. It's not like Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess like I'm looking at the NFL.com list and they're saying Josh Allen was a big snub, but he just had a shit ton of
Josh Allen,
turnovers, man.
no. Josh Allen wasn't a snub because he had a shit year.
I mean,
He had
so
so
dude, he still had 42 overall touchdowns. That's a lot,
right, but
but
he had
but it's just
18
too many
interceptions.
turnovers, man. Yeah,
18, 18 interceptions.
it's like if touchdowns were the only thing that mattered, then yeah, he was a fucking snub.
Yeah,
But
he had a 1.5 to 1, not even a two to
yeah,
one, a 1.5 to 1 touchdown interception ratio.
oh man,
He
yeah.
had he had 66%. He had an overall rating of 92.2. So how is that a
Yeah,
snub
I guess I
if you're
got to
just
see
looking
the
at the
NFC because, yeah, they're saying Antoine Winfield Jr. was a snub. And I know he did have a sweet year, but let's see who the safeties were.
so the safeties
Uh,
for the NFC were free safety was Jesse Bates,
yeah, you
strong safety
can't.
Buda Baker, and Julian Love was the reserve. Okay, I can
You're,
Jesse
you're not
Bates.
beating out Jesse Bates.
You're not beating out Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates, and plus Jesse Bates had a good year in Atlanta that struggled. He still had a decent, a fair. He was like this. he was one of the good points, or if not the only good point for Atlanta.
Yeah.
This year, Jesse Bates had 132 combined tackles, 6 interceptions, one return for a touchdown, and forced 3 fumbles.
That's a monster year as a safety.
Yeah, it's a huge year, and I mean that's glancing at previous year and previous his time in Cincinnati. He had he doubled his forced fumbles of his career this year. He had 3 total, and he had 3 this year. Going this year, he had about he had going into this year, he had 14 total interceptions, and this year he had 6. So he almost had 50% of his career interceptions this year.
He had an amazing year.
Yeah,
he had an amazing year.
Ridiculously amazing year.
Yeah. Nobody's taking him off that list.
You're not beating him. There's no way in hell anybody should have been Pro Bowler over him.
Yeah, he was the man.
Free safety. Buda Bake, well, who was it? It was Winfield, Winfield plays free safety, so
I don't even know. I'm guessing he does, but he's moved around on that defense, and so they just have him listed at safety. But he's been really good for Tampa Bay secondary, man. And I like him as a young, like cornerstone safety for that defense.
So he plays. It doesn't say.
Okay.
There it is. Okay, let me go.
Yeah, see, mine was just listed him as safety, but yeah.
Let me go to Tampa Bay's depth chart, and that'll tell me where they play him. He plays free safety.
Yeah, so he's not beating out Bates.
He's not beating out Bates, and even to further, he had just as good of a season as Bates.
Okay.
He had 122 combined tackles, 3 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles.
Yeah, so he's like a hair off.
Yeah, he's like a hair off. He had more forced fumbles. Double check that. He had more forced fumbles. Basically they flipped interceptions and forced fumbles because Bates had 6 interceptions, Winfield had 3.
Sure.
Bates had 3 forced fumbles, Winfield had 6.
Gotcha.
So they flipped that. Combined tackles, Bates had slightly more, and let me see, pass defenses, Bates had 11, and Winfield had, had 12.
Okay. Yeah, they were pretty close, man.
They're fairly close, but looking at the stats, I understand. I can understand why you could say Winfield is a snub, but also in the same respect, if you're not picking a reserve, for that position, you're splitting hairs saying it should have been Winfield over Bates or Bates over Winfield. I wouldn't argue either of them. The opposite should be it.
Yep, I got you, man. I got you.
Who else does NFL.com say was a snub?
Oh man, I'd have to pull it back up. Some of them are, harder to evaluate than others, right? Let me see if I can find it again. Oh, I want the Pro Bowl.
I will go with a snub, and it's a popularity thing based on the years they had. So for tight end for the NFC, the starter was Kittle, and the reserve was Laporta. I might say 6 TDs.
Yeah, I think Kittle had a pretty sweet year.
Yeah, looking at it, I might not argue it as much.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kittle went over 1,000. It was one of his better years. But yeah, if you didn't know that Kittle had that kind of a year, it would be really hard to not argue Laporta, right?
So, okay. So Kittle had 1,020 yards, and Laporta, who only started 14 games, played in all 17, but only started 14 games, had 889 yards. Laporta had 86 receptions, and Kittle had
65.
100. Oh, that's playoffs. 65. I was like, that's yards playoffs, but 65. Okay. 15.7 versus 10.3. Okay. Looking at the stats, looking at feel feel on it, it feels like this season Laporta was talked about more. Maybe that's because I pay attention to the Lions more. But looking at the stats, I can't even say that's a snub.
No, no, and I mean he made the roster, right? It just you're talking not as the starter.
Yeah. So that's not. Let's see who else. Man, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. That skill positions, they all make sense to me based on the years they had for the NFC outside of that. Like,
Yeah, I mean I wanted St. Brown to be one of them without being a replacement, right? But
I think you could make the argument that um, Mike Evans shouldn't have been a Pro Bowler. Let me look at the stats.
yeah, I'm just gonna take a peek. I mean he had a good year.
He did.
He's just one of those guys where it seems like, and I'd have to look at his game logs, right? But like historically, he's very streaky. Like he'll have like a 220-yard game, and then the next week he'll have like 16 yards. It's like, dude,
So St. Brown played in 16 games, and Evans played in all 17 games. Evans had 1,255 yards and 13 touchdowns. St. Brown in 16 games had 1,515 yards and 10 touchdowns.
yeah, yeah, it's
But
close, but yeah, the touchdowns. I don't know, maybe that's the difference for Evans or something, or popularity contest, just how it is.
but also like when you look at that's what I was gonna look at. You mentioned his game log. This playoffs. So here's his yards receiving. Last game of the year, well, he only was targeted 8 times. Or he was targeted 8 times, 3 receptions, 22 yards, 70. I'm going backwards from week 18. 70 yards, 86 yards, 57 yards, 8 yards, 162 yards, 70, 43, 143, 87, 39.
It seems like a more
Very,
consistent year for him than historically.
it's a more consistent year for him. He had
It's
his
probably because
targets.
Baker was focusing on him big time compared to Godwin, right?
Yeah,
In the past you had Brady and other guys that they were spreading the ball around more, which is probably why it was feast or famine for him. Um, just one of my arguments, I'd say.
yeah, and like I think I think based on touchdowns, like 13 touchdowns in 17 games versus 10 touchdowns in 16 games, you're splitting hairs there. But in one less game, St. Brown had 300 more yards.
Yeah, that's a lot of yards, man.
Yeah. Defense outside of that, like I don't think. don't think there was really. There's not as many. I don't feel like there's as many snubs this year. At least looking at the AFC side or NFC side of it
Yeah.
this year, that as opposed to the past. Like there's like some of them you're splitting hairs and um like St. Brown and versus Mike Evans or Jesse Bates versus Antoine Winfield. Like you're kind of splitting hairs on who goes. For the AFC side of it, there's one there, besides me thinking for offensively, thinking that CJ Stroud should have been at least a reserve over Patrick Mahomes. The other one that sticks out to me is Jamar Chase being a reserve.
Okay.
Because, I mean, he had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. Yeah, he was playing without his in 16 games. He was playing without his quarterback, but it's still it. I'm just like I feel like he should do more. Like he had 14, he 14, 50, almost 1,500 yards as a rookie, and then he played in 12 games. He had, and then like he had 18 yards per reception his rookie year, and then last year it was 12, and this year it was 12.2. Last year it was 12. It was like, what? Why is the rookie year so far ahead of what's happened? And I'm doing yards or average per reception because in last year he only played 12. This year he played 16 games. It just feels like his first year was abnormal compared to where he is now and the hype that is going into him. I don't think 12 yards of reception, and I'd have to search the AFC and search the stats to tell you who I think should be there besides him. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, man, I was just looking at one that
like
it's another.
Nico Collins, 16.2 yards per reception. Yeah, he missed 2 games. He played 2 less games than Jamar Chase and had 281 yards more than Jamar Chase.
Gotcha.
And that's on 36 less receptions than Jamar Chase. There's one right there. There's a big where I think is a big snub. Somebody that was 8th in 15 games was 8th in receiving yards overall in the entire league. 3rd in the second most receiving yards in the AFC. That's Houston. Another snub for Houston.
It's that damn popularity shit, man.
Yeah. So there's one that I think I would swap out. Outside of that, kind of looking at it,
Well,
and
let me give you one on the NFC because it's a Lions one. Is David Montgomery instead of DeAndre Swift. So Swift had like 1,250-ish total yards in 6 touchdowns. Montgomery, I think in a couple fewer games, had like 1,150-ish yards and 13 touchdowns. I mean, that's a big swing on touchdowns, man.
So Montgomery played it's 2 fewer games. And in 16 games, DeAndre Swift had 1,049
Rushing.
rushing.
He had an additional about 200 and something receiving.
David Montgomery in 14 games, one less game, had 34 less yards, three more touchdowns.
Oh, I'm showing he had 8 more touchdowns.
Yeah, eight more touchdowns. Sorry, I,
I mean, I'd
I
give it to him on that. You're talking,
yeah.
a little difference in yards, but 8 more touchdowns. Fucking Montgomery got snubbed compared to Swift, man. I don't
Well,
even know how
and that
Swift got that many votes, man. Nobody fucking even liked him in Detroit. He was always hurt. What,
but
you go to Philly and now everybody loves you?
that could be the same token. Like even taking it um to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs had 1200 total, had 1,261 yards and 11 touchdowns
Yeah, yeah,
versus, like, I mean, just looking at Swift to Gibbs, he had eh, Swift had about the same amount of yards
yeah,
and half the touchdowns.
yeah. Throw him out
And
of there, man.
yeah, there's one I overlooked that. I think what was sticking in my mind with Swift was like that one game where he rushed for like 300 yards.
Like, and he was healthy all year for the first time ever, right? So,
Yeah. Well,
you know,
no, he wasn't healthy all year for the first time ever.
what, he missed one game?
Yeah,
Okay,
but he
well,
played most of the game. Yeah.
he
Either way.
barely played a whole game in Detroit, like his whole
Yeah,
year, his whole career.
that's
He was just fucking hurt all the time.
that's true. I'll give you that one. Like I think what I was remembering and what was sticking out of my head was like that one. I don't even remember who it was against. It might have been against, no, because we didn't play them. Thank God. Um, she would have had like 700 rushing yards in that game if we played them.
Yeah, with our luck, yep, former player.
So it was the it was against Minnesota. He had 100. He had. I was remembering those 2 weeks right there, uh, like second and third week of the season. He had 175 in 2 games. He had 305 yards rushing, and
Okay,
that's what was sticking out of my head for the season.
gotcha.
So yeah, outside of that, like I mean, that's 30 in 2 games. He had 30% of his rushing yards.
Yeah, yeah, it's all right, man. It's all right. I'm still happy we got 5 guys in and then some alternates, so it's still a good year for the Lions, man. Happy overall.
Yeah, happy overall. I mean, like outside of that though, outside of like those like few like a little bit here, like um DeAndre Swift making the Pro Bowl versus a Detroit play, versus Gibbs or Montgomery. I would say Montgomery based on the year over Gibbs, but you're really splitting hairs on how they were used.
Yeah,
Gibbs is more dynamic, where Montgomery's more power.
yep. Yeah, and I think yeah, Gibbs as the year went on became more the man, right? And
Yeah,
Gibbs next year is
exactly.
going to be the man, and then Montgomery will be the supplement. But yeah, it just they were on sort of different paths.
Yeah, it's like that one. C.J. Stroud,
Yeah, Stroud for sure, man. That one was a hose job.
um, Jamar Chase over Nico Collins. Outside of that, like I can't make any real.
No, I'd have to do a deep dive because some of the linemen are hard to really evaluate. Especially the interior defensive linemen because
Mhm.
the stats barely tell the story with those guys.
Yeah,
Um, so, some of them are tricky, but, and I think I'm like less passionate about the Pro Bowl now because of how much it's changed. So it's like, in past years, I would have been digging through it like, oh, this is bullshit, this guy, that guy. But now I'm kind of like, it's close enough.
I think I might have just saw another one.
Okay.
No, no, because I didn't realize he had that many yards, like few TDs. But I was gonna say James Cook. Like I don't even really remember him, and I was thinking possibly Najee Harris over James Cook, but James Cook had 100 more yards than Harris.
Gotcha. Yeah, they finally got him going this year.
Yeah, Harris had 6 more touchdowns, but with James Cook, Josh Allen was stealing all his fucking red
Yeah,
zone touchdowns, where where Najee had
he had to
Joe
get him.
Smith, Joe Smith playing quarterback. You had to have him. So no, I mean if you're looking at touchdowns only, but yards wise and attempts wise, um, I because James Cook had 100 about 100 more yards on 18 less carries. James Cook averaged 4.7, where Najee averaged 4.1.
Okay.
So I was like, that's another one it just caught my eye, but can't really can't really argue that one either. I'm trying to argue why these why these players shouldn't be maybe Raheem Mostert over no
No,
because
Mostert had a
yards per
shitload of
carry
touchdowns, man.
2 games 2 game well he played 2 games less than Najee Harris and had about the same amount of yards.
Yeah,
So
but Mostert had like what,
Mostert
15
had
touchdowns or something? 18
18
touchdowns?
rushing touchdowns.
That's a lot, man.
18 rushing touchdowns.
That's more than one a game, dude.
Yeah. And especially for Miami, because Tua threw 29
Yeah,
touchdowns.
yeah.
So I
Very
mean,
dynamic offense.
yeah, it's a very dynamic offense. Very glancing at it, it looks like it's a fairly balanced offense too.
Yeah,
That's scary if they could put it together.
yeah. Historically, Mostert's been hurt a lot, right? And it was his
Hmm.
first year that he stayed pretty healthy. So,
Yeah,
all right, man.
but
I'm running
yeah,
out of steam.
I am too. I'm trying to find people to argue with. I will say that I was glad that they could find another fullback in the league to
Yeah,
take Kyle Juszczyk's spot
yeah.
because I was wondering what they were going to do at fullback because there's no and apparently there's one in the AFC too, um,
Yep, they were
which
just
was
going to convert a tight end.
so I'm glad they were able to find CJ Ham to
Yeah.
to sub in for USEC because USEC's playing in the Super Bowl. I wish USEC could play in the Pro Bowl and which would mean the Lions would be in the Super Bowl. But hey, I digress.
All right. Well, hey, let's keep question of the week easy. And I'm sure this is what I asked you last year about the Pro Bowl, but do you think you're going to watch the game, James? Like the flag football game, at least. Because that's
If
like kind of like the main event now, right?
yeah, if I had more, if I was single and didn't have kids, probably
Okay.
I would. I just I have to give this weekend and specifically this Sunday to the wife and kids because next Sunday I I'm out of commission the entire
Yeah,
fucking day.
that's a
So
good call.
I kind of have to so I probably will not.
Okay.
I might try to sneak in a little bit here and there, but I probably won't. I tried to last year and I got busy and couldn't do it. And when I turned it on, the wife said, "What the fuck are you watching flag football for?" Not in those terms, but basically, like
Yeah.
what the hell is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. No, I'm with you, dude. I would say the only variable that's a little different for me is that if if Mark wants to watch it,
Hmm.
then I would watch it with him because it could be fun for him and he might like the skills challenges. And like I know like NFL did like slime time with a lot of the games. I guess I probably got to look because if they do anything like that for the Pro Bowl, then I'm sure Mark is going to want to check it out, in which case I'll watch some of it with him. But otherwise, I mean, it's like, I'm like, there's
Right, but
always something else to do. So,
the skills stuff is on Thursday, not Sunday.
okay. Yeah, well, yeah, but so for slime time, usually they need the couple of days to edit it, right?
Hmm.
So, but, yeah,
So they are they are there is a broadcast on Disney on Sunday on Disney XD,
okay.
which apparently is at the new Disney Channel. I don't know what XD is
There's a
versus
bunch of Disney channels, man. Yeah.
Disney Channel. So uh, I don't know which Disney Channel that is, but Disney XD. So the
That's like
Sunday of
that's for like slightly older kids.
okay, because it's going to be on ABC, Disney XD, and ESPN Plus simulcast. So there
Okay.
might be something on
They'll
Sunday.
slime time it or something. Well,
And
because
this
the
slime
slime
time's
time's
Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon.
They'll do
So,
some, but they'll do some. They'll probably
yeah.
do something like they did with the
Oh,
was
yeah,
it
like the different,
London game
the
where
animated characters. Yeah.
where they did like was it Toy Story or
Yep.
yeah
Yeah, the
Toy
kids like
Story
that, man. Yeah.
yeah. So they might do something like that, but what's this? This is sort of broadcast for Pro Bowl events while the Thursday block of skills competition will be held on the Saturday afternoon after the event. Okay, so skills competition is happening Thursday, but it's airing on ABC on Saturday.
Okay.
So it's going to be done and probably going to know the results of it. Then it's going to air. So I'm not going to spend my fucking time watching that. And I would try to watch the flag football on Sunday, but like I said, I'm probably just won't have the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your strategy. Get your family time in because Super Bowl Sunday, you're going to be wanting adult man time. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
All right, my man. That's all I got for tonight. You got any closing thoughts?
No, that's I probably went on way too much about the Pro Bowl, but
I'm glad you did because I didn't have much. So, so it worked out. We found some balance.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of the time I'm doing all the talking, so it was
exactly.
good. So, all right. Well, yeah. Hey, for anybody who's watching, we hope you liked the show. If you didn't, I mean, at this point, I really don't care because we're only getting like 12 views a week. So, but if you did, hit that subscribe button and maybe a thumbs up or whatever else. And James, it's always fun, man. I hope you have a good night, bud. I'll catch you later.
All right, sounds good. Hope you have a good night.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.